Welcome to the Duchy. It's time for another episode of the Dukes of Dice podcast, a proud member of the Dice Tower Network.
Coming to you from the Duchy in the Duke City, Albuquerque, New Mexico, it's the Dukes of Dice, a podcast about board, card, and occasionally role-playing games. Today, the Dukes review Cool Mini or Not's Potion Explosion. Then they look back at their review of Voyages of Marco Polo in their Dukes Double-Take. And finally, they look at when a game stops becoming Cult of the New. And now, the Dukes of Dice.
Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. This is Sean.
And Alex.
This is episode 110 of the Dukes of Dice. I want a new drug, Alex.
Yeah.
I don't, but that's what we're calling it. I want a new drug.
It's perfect.
It is perfect. Why is it perfect, Alex?
So this one was a tricky week in general, by the way. We had a lot of contenders. But the reason this one worked for us was potions. You're kind of mixing something that's an elixir, that's a cure, that's a drug. There's love potions in that game. And, of course, Cult of the New. I want something new, so fit perfectly. And also, it's a Huey Lewis reference, Sean.
Who?
Huey Lewis and the news. You can't forget about the news. Huey Lewis would be nothing without the news.
So, I heard plenty of Huey Lewis in the news growing up, but I think, to me, the big cultural touchstones of Huey Lewis in the news are number one, American Psycho.
Number one, American Psycho.
Well, okay.
Number one, Back to the Future.
Yeah, I'm listing them. I'm not saying
okay.
importance.
It's a list of things.
Yes, otherwise I'd be counting down.
Got it.
And number two would be Back to the Future because he's the judge in Back to the Future.
And also their songs are all over those movies.
Well, yeah, too.
Generally. Power of Love. And Back in Time. And,
Gonna go back in time.
And Double Back.
Have you ever seen that Saturday Night Live sketch? Michael J. Fox is in an elevator and two other people show up and they're like, oh, it's Michael J. Fox. And I think it's, who's the, Dana Carvey. It's all, gonna go back in time.
Oh, I'll have to watch it.
Yeah, it's pretty funny.
I've not seen it. Way off track already. Congrats to James Holzhauer for naming that one, by the way. First time namer.
Yeah, so if you don't know, we have a Board Game Geek Guild. We're guild number 2008, and every week we have all of our awesome guild members contribute to the naming of an episode, and we'll give you some of our runner-ups there at the end. But congrats to James, and I Want a New Drug, episode 110.
Other things going on in the guild. Last week, episode 109, I'll Be Back. That was my bad Arnold.
Okay.
We kind of had dueling Arnold Schwarzenegger impersonations.
For other reasons that we were off the rail.
Yes,
anyway.
and we had people vote on that. And Sean, I whooped you.
Sure did, Alex.
18 people, not a ton voted in that.
No.
But 10 gave it to me. 7 said both of the impressions were terrible.
Sure.
Probably accurate. And only one person, I don't know who that is, maybe it was you, said Sean had the better Arnold Schwarzenegger impression.
Okay.
Yeah.
I did not vote because I remain pure. Maybe I did, actually. That might be a lie.
Did you actually vote?
I don't remember. I don't think I did. I'm pretty sure I did it. Or if I did, it was for We Both Suck.
And excellent. Other goings on in the guild. The other cool thing was this kind of debate between collections versus a library. So do you call your group of board games a board game collection or a board game library? And this has already gotten some chatter on the guild. Sean, what do you call your group of games?
A murder of board games.
That only works for crows.
And board games.
No.
Yeah, so I don't know. I haven't thought about it, but it's certainly been kind of piquing my interest, and I'm kind of thinking about it. Basically, there's maybe a different connotation depending on the two, although there's also been some suggestion that really there is no distinction, and there's some library science going on, which is pretty cool. So yeah, interesting stuff over there on the guild.
Scott Neelitz posted this one on the guild, and his basic argument was because you're using games, you're pulling them off the shelf, they're getting use. It's more of a library, something you go to, as opposed to a collection, which is like a coin collection or something like that. It might be displayed, but it's not necessarily used.
I call my Magic cards a collection, and I play with them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah, it's throwing it out there.
I have a collection because, for the most part, they collect dust in a closet upstairs.
Okay.
Unfortunately. my personal collection. So I call it a collection, but I can understand why library makes a ton of sense. So very interesting topic and cool things on the guild. Sean, anything else in show business?
Well, just want to talk about our Patreon. We have one of those up and running. If you go on over to patreon.com/Dukes of Dice, you can go over there and help support the show. And we appreciate all of our amazing Patreon patrons. And just want to give a quick shout out to Jeremy Robinson, who is a brand new Knight of the Duchy. Thank you very much, Jeremy. And again, thanks to everyone else. And because of some of our Patreon supporters, we've been able to do some extra content One of those we'll talk about in Games Played here in a minute or two.
Yeah.
Well, let's do that, Alex. What have you played this week?
So I have played quite a few things, and I actually beat you out for new plays this week.
Did.
Just because of the way things worked out, I'd already gotten a good amount of plays of Potion Explosion in. Oh, excuse me. Potion Explosion! That's one, by the way, for those counting at home.
I'm going to edit all of them out.
Are you going to edit every single one of them?
Every single one, and I'm going to replace it with Potion Explosion!
That's not how I'm saying it.
Okay. No, I know it's not. I'm doing something different.
I understand. Disappointing. All right. First play I got in that was new. Matthew brought this, our good buddy Matthew brought this to Empire Board Game Library for our Dukes of Dice game night. Pandemic Cthulhu.
I got an issue with you right now.
Okay.
You can't spell Cthulhu in the show notes.
Oh. And I'm a former Santa Fe County spelling bee champion, sir. How did I misspell?
Well, I'm just saying.
I'm not allowed to spell it.
No. I'm saying when Cthulhu rises, he's going to eat you first because you've angered him and misspelled him.
How did I misspell it?
There's an H in front of the L.Kthuhlu. Cthulhu.
Okay. All right. Pandemic Cthulhu is a Cthulhu, spelled properly, but pronounced the same, reskin of Pandemic. And boy, this one kicked us square in the nuts.
H after the L. Cthulhu. Anyway, go on. Kicked you in the nuts.
Yes.
Continue with the nut kicking.
Difficult game. So for folks who are wondering, this is in many ways a reskin of Pandemic. If you know the rules of Pandemic, you're going to understand a lot about how to play. What's different is the cultists and the Shoggoths play very differently, and there's this insanity mechanic, which makes sense.
What do you call them? Shoggoths?
Shoggoth? Is that how it's pronounced?
Shoggoth.
Shoggoth.
Pretty sure.
Sure. Whatever.
I mean, they're all made up words, but go on.
Excellent.
Oh, cultists? Is that how you pronounce it?
Yes, it is. It's not cultists. So you have relics in the game, and there's an insanity mechanic, which is cool. So you have different characters with their different abilities. If your character gets too much insanity from encountering the Shoggoths, or
Shoggoths, yeah.
Or Shoggoths, whatever.
No.
The character card flips and you have some lesser form of the ability. And if you get too much insanity, I think you can straight up die and lose. But don't quote me on that. I don't remember that. I know if every character goes insane, you definitely lose.
Sure.
Which isn't good. There's more ways to lose in this one, I think.
Like most pandemics.
Your objective of this pandemic is to close the 4 gates in 4 different towns in this game. It's a smaller map, but more condensed.
Arkham, Innsmouth, the others.
Don't ask me. All right. If the Shoggoths, whatever, are on a gate and their card comes up to move, there's certain cards in the deck that have movement mechanics for these guys. Basically, the next Elder God flips up. And when an Elder God flips up, it has some bad effect for you and also can potentially end the game. The last one of those Elder Gods being Cthulhu. When Cthulhu flips, you lose the game immediately because he's risen and you're screwed.
Cthulhu Fatagan.
I don't know what that means.
It's like Praise to Cthulhu.
Great.
You don't know jack about Cthulhu.
I have not read any Lovecraft anything.
Okay.
So, sorry.
I've got like the collected works if you want to.
No, I'm still working on Dune, which I only read when I'm traveling.
I've read like 8 books since then.
I only read when I'm traveling or online.
All right.
So I consume stuff differently than you do. Probably at a lesser rate.
Okay.
Anyway, still way off the rails and on this topic. The other mechanic with the cultists, if there's a group of 3 of them and a cultist card for a location where you'd add a cultist comes up, instead of spreading out, they just flip up a next Elder God. So there's kind of a cool countdown timer there, things getting tougher over the course of the game, interesting abilities. I think this is a really cool and really thematic reskin of this game, and I enjoyed it quite a bit. It is difficult. It's a hard game. But I think this is going to be one that's going to work for a lot of folks out there. So if you're into the Lovecraftian thing at all, I think you'll enjoy this one. Give it a shot. Give it a look. There's great variability here, and it's just ripping in theme. Gorgeous art. That's Pandemic Cthulhu. Over to you, Sean.
All right. So I got to play Oh My Goods by Alexander Pfister, and it was decent. It was okay.
Oh, come on.
No, it was amazing. It was super good. Wow. So you've played this several times now. I got to play this for the first time on Wednesday night, and we played this. We went to play something else, and then at the end, I'm like, hey, do you guys want to play Oh My Goods again? And so I got 2 games of it that night, and in fact, Empire sold out of their, I think, 4 copies that were on the shelf, because everyone that played it is like, oh, I'm going to buy it. It was just amazing. It's a very quick game, 30 minutes, very simple kind of engine building. You're building these buildings to generate more resources that are worth different amounts of money, which you use to spend to build more buildings, or also spend to get workers who can help with your production. But the coolest part is there's this kind of a light press your luck mechanic whereby you're flipping over cards from a deck that reveal certain resources that you're using to power these buildings. But you may flip over 2, you may flip over 7, and then you make a decision which building am I going to power? Am I going to do kind of a high-powered thing where it produces 2? or at a discount, I can just produce one. And then after you decide, make commitments, then you flip over a second batch of cards. And so maybe you're hoping, I just need one more clay card to show up. It was incredibly good, very fast. It played really smoothly. Everyone seemed to get it pretty quickly. And it's just a really nice engine building thing that you're doing. I'm making this resource to then turn into this resource and then turn into this. I'm building these other gray buildings that are going to give me discounts on certain things or give me extra cards to draw. It was just fantastic. It is super good. I've played it only at 4 players, and I really enjoyed it at 4. I don't have any problems with that player count. I'm sure 3's probably excellent.
And 2's fine too.
Yeah.
From having played it at 2.
Oh man, it's just super good. Just super good. So I really like it. And Alexander Pfister, has won so many awards recently. And I think just so well deserved. He's just a fantastic designer. Like Mombasa's fantastic. Broom Service is really good. Not my favorite of his designs, but still.
And see, I love Broom Service.
Oh yeah. No, I like it. I like it a lot too. But as far as like Mombasa and like this game's amazing. Isle of Skye's amazing. He's just an amazing designer. Port Royal. I actually I have the expansion to Port Royal. We need to play that.
There you go. I just looked this up, by the way. You can get it with shipping included. It's not Prime eligible, but with shipping, you can get it for $15 on Amazon. And for how much game you get in this little box for Oh My Goods, it's fantastic. So strong recommendation for Oh My Goods for all the folks out there.
Yeah, strong recommendation from me as well. Absolutely.
So I got into play of Merchants and Marauders Broadsides. And boy, this version of me hadn't come out for a while, Sean. Princess and the Pea Alex had not come out for a while.
Nope.
Princess and the Pea Alex was out to play with this one. And
you've now embraced the title.
I look, you can't beat them, join them, I guess. And what Sean's referring to is I can be finicky, especially when learning a new game. If the rules explanation isn't good or you're muddling through the rule book or something like that, I can get impatient super fast. I want to just play and I'm done listening. So this is Merchants and Marauders in that universe. You are basically playing 2 different pirate ships that are firing at each other using cards from a deck that you draw independently. You use different cards to aim a target, different parts of the ship. There are crew members, there's planks in the hull, and then there's masts. The masts keep you from evading other players' shots. You can reload cannons. There's all sorts of things going on. What it comes down to is there are some elements that are similar enough to Battle Line to where I would just rather play Battle Line than this. And maybe I need to give it another chance. I probably do. But on first play, this one was pretty convoluted. Had a lot of stuff tacked on. I think, Sean, you'll like this better than I will.
Probably.
Generally. But for me, there's just too much going on, and I'd rather play Battle Line for that 2-player head-to-head, fighting over stuff kind of experience, using straights and flushes and poker hands, or, and I'm super excited about this, the soon-to-be-fulfilled Tiny Epic Western, coming soon to my house, hopefully.
And my house.
Yes.
To both our houses.
Yes.
A pox on both of them.
No, not a pox.
Oh.
Yeah, a pleasure, because that game's awesome.
No, okay.
And I can't wait to play it.
I'm just quoting Shakespeare because I'm classy.
As opposed to Broadsides, which it's going to take a little bit to have me play that one again. So I did win, but Merchants, Marauders, Broadsides. That's that game. Over to you, Sean.
All right. Well, I got to play one of my all-time favorite games, a game that when we did a double take on it, I rated a 6. It fell off my top 10. It used to be on my top 10, but it's still fantastic. And that's Lords of Vegas, designed by Mike Selinker. In fact, Alex, you did an interview with him a couple weeks ago, and I love this game. I played with 4 players, and everyone had played except for Nick. We played with Chris, Nick, and our buddy Daniel, who we haven't seen in a long time. He played in our Descent campaign with us a while back, and he was a dwarf.
Tripwire.
Tripwire. I'm going to move one space. Tripwire. I'm going to look this way. Tripwire.
Yeah. Yep.
Anyway, so we talked to Nick, and this game is so fantastic, but there's so many things about this game I feel like I should hate it, and yet I love it. It's just a fantastic game. It's so chaotic and luck-based, but that whole Vegas theme really kind of ties that together and makes it work. So the idea is that you are flipping over these random cards, which are giving you this lot, a lot on a map of Vegas, the strip, a bunch of different sections of Vegas on the strip. And so if you own a lot, you're able to build there for a certain price. And you're building different types of casinos. And the bigger the casinos get, the more points you're going to get. And also the different dice that you have on each spot, the casino can give you different amounts of money. And there's the best part about this game is the open negotiation. It's for favors to be named in the future. It's for immediate things. You can swap ownership of tiles. You can swap any number of things. And you can go gambling at other people's casino. It's so good. I love this game. And I know that it's not for everyone. I know there are some people that just absolutely hate this game and they just think it's too random and luck-based. And yeah, it probably is, but I still love it. I think it's just absolutely fantastic. One of the coolest parts about this game is there's kind of a slow down the leader mechanic. It's not really a catch-up mechanic, but it's just a thing you have to hurdle past. Is for the first 10 or 12 points or so, anytime you score a point, you move one space forward. But then you need to score 2 points at a time to jump up, and then 3 points at a time to jump to the next level, and then 4, and then 5. Such a great game. And I won, but I kept changing my buildings because there's an action you can take to remodel your casino from one theme to another. And I kept doing it like right as one casino type was running out, because you see how many of these cards come up, and that's when they pay out that particular casino type. And I would switch it right before a big hit. And it was so good. So I love this game. Lords of Vegas by Mike Selenker, Mayfair Games. You need to play this again soon.
Yeah, no doubt.
So I know
doubt.
It's one of your favorites.
Enjoyed a lot, for sure. So I got into play of Mystic Vale, and this is a really unique game, Sean. This is a deck builder, but it's not really a deck builder so much as a card builder, because what you have in this game is you have different cards that have middle sections, top sections, and bottom sections. You can upgrade them with these little things that go into card sleeves that overlay or add to previous cards, basically. And so this card that previously was blank now all of a sudden becomes mana or money as you go forward. Or it has some effect later in the game that lets you remove things. There's a push your luck element to this, where you're flipping over the top card of your deck as you're going, and so you can easily go bust in this game and get messed up that way. I had a ton of fun. It had a lot of elements of Splendor, where you needed certain symbols to qualify for things, or certain things to qualify for these different upgrades. It just, for whatever reason, had that effect, because you had the 3 levels of upgrades, and you start the game only getting the level 1s. If you don't switch to the level 2s and 3s soon enough, things can go badly for you. It doesn't have the engine building that Splendor has, but it has kind of a deck building, card building kind of thing.
Is it fair to say that everything is Splendor? Cue the music! Wait, no, don't cue the music.
Don't cue the music. It's been a long time since I've made that reference or comparison, but I think it's actually apt here. There's certainly things that carry over. Sean, you need to try this one, I think.
Yeah, no, I'm very interested to try it.
And I did enjoy it. I need to play it again, knowing what some of the card effects are. I think I'll play it a little differently. I think certainly it's been talked about as a proof of concept that, hey, this thing can work. This thing can be used in a game, not just as a deck builder, but as a card builder. And I think it absolutely proves that. It works super well. Enjoyed it a lot. Give this one a look if you haven't already, Mystic Vale.
Okay, very cool. Well, the last game I'm going to talk about is BattleLore 2nd Edition from Fantasy Flight Games. In fact, we just finished playing this as part of one of our Patreon videos that we did live on YouTube. We didn't get too many people that came on for this. We've been doing these live Q&As, and we decided let's change the format a bit. And so we got a 2-camera setup, one where it's kind of us in a medium shot, and then there's an overhead shot of the board. And it was a lot of fun. I love BattleLore. This is actually one of our Boxcars Award winners. We both gave it a 6. You've got more plays of it, Alex, on the app than I have.
Yes.
And we, for the first time, busted out the Undead expansion, which is the 3rd faction that you can play with. And I managed to, I don't know, maybe you should go watch that video. I don't want to say who won, but I had a lot of fun. I really enjoyed the Undead.
It was a good game. I was a little rusty for sure.
Sure. And so this is a Richard Borg design, and you might hear a little bit more about Richard Borg. I feel like there's so many things we're going to keep talking about later on in the episode. But anyway, Richard Borg, it's one of his Commands and Colors game, like Memoir 44, Commands and Colors Ancients, Napoleonics. Anyway, and it's just such a cool system, very tactical combat game with card-driven, and I love this game. It's fantastic. There's so much chrome on this game. The Fantasy Flight edition of this is just beautiful. The miniatures are really cool. Lots of cool effects with these magic cards, the lore cards, and I love BattleLore. I just think it's fantastic. So go check that out over on our YouTube channel. We'd really appreciate that. And then real quick, before we finish talking about the recent plays, just want to mention the Fantasy Board Game League we're doing over with Draft Mechanic Podcast.
Want to know, baby?
Yeah, me too. So we both won our games or our matches last week. By the time this airs, week 3 will have started. Hopefully, I will have beaten Roy, and you will have beaten Mike, and Matthew is trailing behind Quentin at this point. So I'm going to put a link down in the show notes, or if you just want to go over to draftmechanic.net, you can go sign up, because there's a voting component to this. And we talked about it last episode, in episode 109, if you want to hear some more details about it. But every time you enter, and it's once per week you can enter, you will get entered in a chance to win a $100 gift certificate from Cool Stuff Inc., which is pretty sweet. So this week, in week 3, go vote. I will be playing against Mike Risley from the What Did You Play This Week podcast thing. Matthew is playing against Roy from Epic Gaming Night Podcast. And Alex, you're playing against Quentin from Boards Alive. So go vote on that. Go Team Dukes. Hopefully I'll be 2-0. I think you'll probably be 2-0. And
yeah, I'm going to run into some trouble down the line, but I have I have a softer schedule early on just based on kind of the scores that we've seen with this so far. So we'll see how it goes.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for what we played. Let's head on over to the news desk.
All right, first up in news, we have some winners for the International Gamers Award. Sean, who took this one home, and were you surprised?
I was not surprised. So we talked about the nominees the other week, and the winner was one Alexander Pfister. I feel like we just talked about him, and he won for Mombasa.
I feel like I'm going to let him down if I lose even a game in the Fantasy Board Game League.
Yeah, because your team is the Albuquerque Fisters.
Yes.
But yeah, Mombasa is a fantastic game. I've got it upstairs. I haven't played my copy yet, but I've played it once. Would love to get it back to the table. Are you going to like it, Alex? I don't know, but you need to try it at least.
It's a Pfister game. I think at this point, I have to at least try whatever he puts out.
Right. And so that was the strategy winner. The two-player winner was Seven Wonders Duel. Seven Wonders Duel. And Alex really wants you to
keep playing that game.
Log your plays of that because that was his first pick from the Fantasy League. So congrats to those winners. Both excellent games in my estimation, not so much in Alex's.
Yeah, at least not with Duel. I haven't played Mombasa yet, so jury's still out on that one.
Okay.
Next up in news, hey, we just talked about this one, Mystic Vale.
What? This is crazy.
Yeah, how did that work out? Sean, there's an expansion coming for this. What do we know about this?
So it's called Veil of Magic, and it's going to expand the game with 58 new advancement cards and 18 new Veil cards. So what are those? Because I don't really...
So advancement cards are the things you tuck into the sleeves.
Okay.
So the top, middle, and bottom things, those are the advancements. So that'll be cool. That'll add some variety to it. The Veil cards are the things that are kind of the Splendor. So in Splendor, you claim things when you have a certain number of buildings.
Sure.
This looks for symbols you have in your hand at the time. You can claim these Veil cards up top, and they're permanent additional effects. So they might be a boost to your income. They might be victory points end of game. They might give you an ability. So excellent. Yeah, it helps with the variability. Needs an expansion. Glad to see one's coming.
And so apparently the Veil cards, the 18 new Veil cards, are going to have a new type of magic, arcane magic.
Okay.
All right. So that's supposed to be coming out in October. So go check that out. I guess I need to get playing the base set first.
I think you'll probably like this, if I had to guess. We'll see how that goes. And next up, Cyclades Monuments. Speaking of expansions.
Right. And speaking of Bruno Cathala, who just won the Seven Wonders Duel for the IGA. So obviously this is designed by Bruno Cathala and Ludovic Malblanc, coming out from Madigo Games. And it's going to add in 10 new monument miniatures with cards that are going to give you some sort of special ability. I'm not quite sure how this is working, but it looks like they match the different colors of city tiles that you can get. So there's like the Ares military, the seaports for Poseidon, the temples for Athena, the academy for Athena, and then the purple temples for Zeus. And so it looks like these are some of those colors, and there's also like multicolor pieces. So I don't know if those will like satisfy multiple parts of the portions you need for a city. You need 4 different colors for a city. So sounds really interesting. The MSRP on this is $19.99, 10 little miniatures and some cards. Sounds about right. And it's supposed to come out this holiday season. So I'm interested. I like expanding Cyclades. I really enjoy it with the Titans expansion. Don't enjoy as much as, say, Kemet, but I still enjoy Cyclades. You might want to give another shot, Alex, with Titans in. I think you'd like it better with Titans. It seems to end quicker. No?
Okay.
No? All right.
Yeah.
You won. You won the game.
I did, and I complained the whole way through.
You sure did.
All right, and finally, we're looking at Kickstarter, and this week we are looking at Mutant Chronicles Siege of the Citadel 2nd Edition. Sean, a lot of folks excited for this one.
Yeah, so this is based off the first edition Mutant Chronicles, which came out in the 90s. There's also a movie with, I think it had, what's his face? The Beauty and the Beast guy, and Hellboy, and Sons of Anarchy guy. I can't remember his name. The guy that played Hellboy. Anyway.
I haven't seen that.
It's a good movie.
Much to your surprise.
Yeah, it kind of felt like a 40K. It's not a good movie. It was fun and enjoyable. But anyway, so this is kind of a grim, dark, techno future. And this game was designed in the first edition by Richard Borg. So he's come back and he's gotten a little help from his friends. Kevin Wilson, one of the designers of Descent and Arkham Horror. Eric Lang, who's designed Blood Rage, the others. A million things. And then Jay Little from X-Wing Miniatures, Blood Bowl team manager. So this is kind of a monster design team. This is This is pretty nuts. I mean, if nothing else, that should make you take notice. If you're not familiar with the Mutant Chronicles universe, that alone, that design pedigree is pretty fantastic. So, I mean, right there, that's piqued my interest. Having known the game, having played the game before, our buddy Roberto had the last edition. Our other buddy Nick, who is super excited about this, he wants to get together and kind of play through the entire first edition scenario or campaign so that we have kind of a point of reference for comparing the two, because he's getting the full version. In fact, there are two versions you can buy. You can do the Doom Trooper Pledge for $69. That gets you the core box. It gets you a plastic insert stairwell, which is kind of like this 4-quadrant thing, and there's stairs to walk up. So it adds a little bit of 3-dimension to it, and some other bonus stuff. There's also the $149 level, which gets you the core game, the expansion box, and then it's going to unlock, or as miniatures unlock, you're going to get access to all of those. And there's a bunch of other stuff too that comes in that. So I think the value there, because they're going to unlock a bunch of this. I think the value is good. No doubt that's a kind of a high initial price point, initial investment. And this is kind of one of those tactical combat games like Star Wars Imperial Assault or Descent. I don't know where I stand on this because I know Nick's already in for the big one, right?
You're going to ride the free train?
I might.
Woo!
I might. I mean,
all aboard.
It's another one of those campaign style games that would be difficult to get to the table. So I don't know, but I mean, fantastic design.
I'm sure you'll run a campaign without me anyway, Sean.
Oh. Okay.
You guys with Arcadia Quest.
One more to go. So Mutant Chronicles ends October 8th. So go check that out. It's already met its funding goal. $156,000 of its $60,000 goal. I'm interested, but I don't know. Because I feel like if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do the 150 mark or 150 level, and I don't know. I don't know that I want to do that.
If you listen to the show, you know I'm not going anywhere near this.
Oh, you're not?
I might play it. It's probably pretty good.
I feel like you played this once with Roberto.
You keep saying that, and I feel like I'd remember it, but I also maybe wouldn't.
Yeah.
So, yeah. All right, that's a look at Kickstarter, and that's a look at the news.
So I want to take a few minutes to talk about a brand new insert from our friends over at Meeple Realty. Wait, who are you?
Hi, I'm Mariah.
How'd you get down here?
I don't know. I just showed up here.
Hey, do you like any word-based board games?
Yeah, I like Codenames.
Oh, have you played Codenames Pictures?
Yes, I have.
Ooh, have you played Codenames Undercover? Don't answer that. You're not allowed to, Mariah. You're too young, okay? Deal with it.
Okay.
So anyway, our buddies over at Meeple Realty have a brand new insert for Codenames. But not only does it support Codenames, it supports Codenames Pictures, Codenames Undercover, and it holds all three of them in one of those boxes. So go check out the Spy headquarters. In fact, I'm holding it in my hand.
I think it looks really, really cool and space efficient.
Yes. Check out MeepleRealty.com to see all of their other high-quality, innovative inserts engineered to improve your play experience and speed up setup and breakdown of some of your favorite games.
Meeple Realty, think inside the box. All right, this week, we are talking about a game that is eye-catching to say the least. It's Potion Explosion. Is this game a big bomb, or is it a dud? We'll tell you.
Potion Explosion, Alex. It's a CMON game.
You gotta say it properly.
How does that go?
Potion Explosion.
Potion Explosion. Like that?
I hope you don't edit that in.
I hope I do. That would be fantastic. What are you talking about?
Okay.
So this is CMON. Don't call them Cool Mini or not because they're CMON now. And this was designed by Stefano Castelli, Andrea Crespi, and Lorenzo Silva. So this was an interesting game when I first saw it. I undervalued this game because it just kind of looked like a gimmick. And it kind of looked like it looks cute, looks fun, but whatever.
I like gimmicks.
I'm not interested. Well, that says a lot, Alex. That says a lot. So Potion Explosion.
Potion Explosion.
At its center, you have this rack of 5 different colored marbles. And there are 5 columns, and there's kind of a feeder. So a bunch of the marbles are hidden from view. And there's, I don't know, what'd you say, about 7 or 8 that in each column that actually show up at a time?
Something like that.
Something along those lines.
I guessed in the number of columns in a previous episode, and I was way wrong. So yeah. I'm not going to even guess.
Okay. And the object of the game is to score the most points by completing these different potions that have different requirements. You also score points from collecting achievement tiles, which you get by collecting sets of 3 of a kind of the different colored potions, because I think there's, you're playing with six types, I believe, but there's 8 available. Or if you collect 5 different types of potions, that gets you one of those. And also, when all of those tiles are gone, that's going to trigger the last round of the game. You're also going to lose points if you've gotten help from the professor. Every time you get help from the professor, you're going to lose 2 points. Now, on your turn, what you're able to do is you're able to pick any one of the available marbles, take it, put it in your hand. When you remove that marble, the marbles above it are going to fall down. If you match 2 or more marbles, you're going to get all of those marbles, which could then potentially cause a chain reaction of matching other sets of marbles. With all these marbles in your hand, you're now going to place them on your different potions. And some of them require, 4 different marbles. Some of them require like 6 or 7, 8 marbles, and of different colors. So one might need 3 red and 2 yellow, or maybe 2 yellow, 1 blue, 3 green, something like that.
Green?
Or yellow,
What?
Sorry. Yeah, whatever.
What game were you playing?
I don't know. And as you complete these, you're going to then pull the marbles off, put them back in the dispenser. You move the potion from your little science experiment area off and flip it over to show that it's completed. Now, the cool thing is, aside from them just giving you points, there's also one-time abilities on each of these different types of potions that you could turn them completely upside down and you get this ability. So this ability could be removing all colors of one type of marble just to get rid of them, to kind of set yourself up for something, because you can do this at the beginning of your turn or in the middle of your turn or whatever. There's some that let you reuse an ability of another potion. There's some that let you steal kind of leftover marbles from other players. Lots of different abilities. Really cool. Some cool combos that you could perform here. Now, I mentioned getting help from the professor. You can always do that once a turn. This lets you remove a marble of your choice from the board.
You keep
it, but you don't get to cause any explosions that way. So you keep playing until all of those achievement tiles are taken, and then you complete the round. And then whoever has the most points from all their completed potions and negative points and whatever is going to be the winner. And that's how you play Potion Explosion.
Let's get right into this. Rulebook. What do you think?
Yeah, that's good. What's kind of weird is it's not a meaty game and it's not a meaty rulebook, but there's always there's a section that says, and to find out more about this, consult page 7. And it's literally like the next page. And then on the next page, it's like, to learn more about this, see page 8. See page 9. I don't know. It was just kind of weird. It wasn't this big, expansive rulebook. Not a problem. This isn't a problem with the game in any stretch of the imagination. It just seemed weird. It just seemed like a weird reference for such a small rulebook. Easy game to learn, easy game to pick up. I think it does a pretty adequate job of teaching the rules.
I think, fantastic. And there's this whole section, because this kind of bleeds into components. The cool thing about this game is it has this marble rack that fits all of the different marbles on it. There's a whole section kind of explaining how to do that, but luckily enough, you only have to do that one time.
Yes.
One time and you're done.
And it says it's like the one-time solo experience.
Yeah, something. Yeah.
Putting it together.
Kind of joking. Yeah. It's pretty funny in points. It's easy enough to learn from the rulebook. I had to learn it and teach it from the rulebook, and I had absolutely no problems. And what I appreciated, Sean, is they have 8 different potions in the game that you mix and match. You use 6 a game.
Right.
2 of them you leave out. It has a reference guide for all 8 of those potions right on the back, which explains things pretty well.
Sure does.
So I appreciated that. I thought it was well laid out, colorful, beautiful looking, fantastic.
So speaking of arts and components, I think that's where this game really shines. It's a CMON production, which we come to have kind of a high expectation from them. And I think they lived up to that here. Obviously, the centerpiece is that marble rack, and it works really well. It's pretty effective, and it looks cool, and it feels cool. When you drop the marbles in and you just hear the clank, 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 it's very satisfying. It's like one of those stress reliever things with the marbles on the strings, and you pull it and they go back and forth and keep clicking, clacking each other. So that's really cool. I think the different tiles are of a good weight, or a good thickness rather. And I have zero complaints on the components. In fact, I mean, it's not just an adequate job. I think it's fantastic. I think the components are really a strength of this production of this game.
It looks great on the table.
Oh, yeah.
Fantastic. I mean, that marble rack alone with the different marbles sticking out of it, very colorful, looks great. It's an eye grabber. People who see this on the table are going to walk over and be like, "Oh, what are you playing? Oh, that looks really interesting." Because it has a look similar to it of a Bejeweled or a Candy Crush or one of those kind of matching games that people tend to like, but it's in board game form and done in a really cool fashion. It has this area where you can dump them on top and they kind of filter out, and kind of Plinko style to which area they're going to go without the little, pivots, but they move around. Pivots meaning those little pins that the things bounce off in Plinko. I don't know what I'm talking about today, Sean.
Okay.
All right. The potions themselves are really clean. Iconography's great on them. You can tell not only are the tops different, but there's also a symbol which matches up with what's on the back. You can read the point values of those fairly easily, though I tend to ignore those during the games for the most part. It's clean. It's clear. It's a simple enough game to learn, so it's not that you'd expect it to be complicated, but it does the job well. The one component thing, and it's hard to call this a complaint, it's cool that they're potion bottles. I wouldn't have them do this any other way. But the setup for this game requires you to remove stuff, mix stuff, and shuffle stuff.
Yeah, it's really difficult to
and
shuffle.
Shuffling all of those little potions is tricky.
Because they become misaligned. Just
Right.
those stems become misaligned. And yeah, it was really difficult.
And that's one of it doesn't hold it back significantly, but it's a holdback of the game.
For this weight of game, I'd like the setup to be a little bit less involved.
Yeah, and it takes a bit of time.
Yeah.
What's nice about Empire's copy and how they did it is they broke up each of the potions into 8 separate bags, which makes that a little easier, but even then, you're still pulling out 2 of those 8 as potential starter potions, shuffling those up, removing several,
Right.
shuffling up the remainder, and sorting them into 5 semi-equal stacks.
Yeah.
And they're hard to shuffle. It's easy for those to end up clumped up.
Sure.
I don't know a good way of doing it, but I agree with you there.
Yeah, the setup was definitely a bear. So
yeah, components are a strength. In gameplay innovation for this one, Sean.
I think this was kind of where I undersold the game in my mind. Because I'm like, oh, it's like Bejeweled. It's like Candy Crush. That sounds simple. That sounds like not so much of a game. Oh, you're just taking marbles out and seeing what matches? Like there's nothing to that. That's what I thought. And I was wrong. There is some definite, not strategy, but there's some tactics involved. I mean, it's hard to kind of develop a long-term strategy. The strategy is what sets am I collecting, essentially, which isn't really a strategy. It's just, I need 3 of a kind. I need 5 different potion types to get these different tiles. But there's a lot of interesting ways to chain things together to create these different combos from the different potion effects. At the end of the day, though, I feel like it all comes down to, can you pick the right marble to pull for what you need to do and is the most effective? Are you just setting up the next person after you? And that was a little stressful to me because I just feel like I'm missing something a little bit more obvious. And maybe that's to do with my ability to kind of see those connections really easily. A couple times I do things where I'd be like, oh, this will happen. Oh, nope, that didn't happen how I thought it would. And that just may be my ability to play the game. So I think that there is a lot more to this game than I gave it credit for. And I definitely enjoy this game. I don't know in my mind that it has a lot of long-term variability or replayability. I mean, there's some because you're using different sets of potions with different effects every time, but it's hard for me to say right now.
There's a lot to address there. The first piece of it is, Sean, I think you're absolutely right. It is thinkier than it appears. There's more here to this game than it appears. It looks like this cutesy, and even the art style is directed this way, to be kind of more of a cutesy kind of game. There's a lot of cool combo play, and there's a lot of setting up for that one pull that you're doing. Setting up as best you can to complete 2 potions around if you can. That's hard to do sometimes, but if you can do it, you're doing well in this game. There's the trying to use potions at the right time. Save some potions in reserve so that when you fill up for next round, you're not getting off on the wrong foot where you're only pulling 1 marble and going from there. It's getting to a point where you're not relying on the professor for help because that can cost you at the end. At least what I've found is a lot of these games can be fairly tight. So you don't want to ask for help from the professor if you can avoid it. But in certain situations, it sets up such an amazing thing, you kind of want to. There's a great balancing act there. There's a great balancing act of, do I use all of my strength here to do a really amazing move this turn, or do I hold back some of the strength and set up maybe hopefully next turn by the time it comes around to me, there's an even better move out there for me to crush my opponent. I think there's a ton going on here and it works really well. Now, as for replayability, I think that's the chief complaint I keep hearing about this game. And I understand it to some degree. There's 8 potion types. You use 6 of them a game. Mm-hmm. 2 of them they recommend you remove for a first play because they're more advanced, but you can mix them in as you go.
Right.
But for the most part, you're going to be seeing the same kinds of potions. How they play off of each other and how you use them varies depending on what the board setup is. Is that going to be a long-lasting appeal? I don't know. For me, I haven't gotten sick of this yet.
Sure.
I've played this a good, I think, 5 times total in that range.
Okay.
I haven't gotten sick of it yet because the combo play of this is so engaging and because it's such a quick iteration time. You can play this quickly. It doesn't overstay its welcome, at least for me. I think you were talking about a bit, it might overstay its welcome a little at 4 players.
Yeah. I think it just seemed a little bit long, and it has that problem, and I use problem, I don't know, kind of loosely, but in a game with a lot of tactical considerations, where you know the board state or the rack state is going to change so much between the end of your turn and the start of your next turn, because there's 3 players, before you, then I think of a game like 5 Tribes.
Right.
Which has that in spades. But there's so much interesting decisions to make in that, and there are a lot of combos you can do in 5 Tribes that I find that just an incredible experience. This one, not necessarily as much, but it's unfair to compare it to Five Tribes because they're different weights of game, different length of play. But just in my mind, though, with that highly tactical experience where you're making kind of decisions on the spot, you're not doing a lot of ongoing strategic planning, it's not quite as interesting. And again, maybe that's unfair, but...
With 2 players, I think you actually have the opposite problem.
Sure.
Where the board state doesn't change enough before it gets back to you. And so I think the sweet spot for this game is for sure 3. I would play it at 4 and 3. I'd be less inclined to play it at 2.
Okay.
So I played it at all of those counts. 3 players, I think, is where I want this game, for sure. Most rewarding experience, most interesting things going on. There's still enough targets for that one spell that, the love potion it's called, that lets you steal from another person's reserves.
Right.
The other thing to me with this game, Sean, and I don't know if you feel this way, this is one where whether I'm winning or losing, I find the experience satisfying. The experience of looking for a good, interesting move to do.
Yeah.
Satisfying. And it's one of those that's fun to lose. It's in that category of fun to lose games for me. And there's not a ton of games that necessarily fit that bill, where even if I know I'm getting my butt handed to me, I'm still having fun with the exercise of pulling that marble, seeing things click down. And I think it's the components that sell that piece of it to me.
Right. Yeah, I can definitely see that. And I don't know if I'm just really bad at this game, which could be a very strong possibility, because I haven't won this game, and I haven't had strong showings. I'm pretty bad at this game.
Interesting.
And I don't know...
I'm surprised by that, actually, just based on your play style, because you're a good combo player.
Yeah, well, and I don't know, like, for example, in the game I played last night, I felt like Nancy to my left and Nick to my right were having this crazy plays where they were consistently getting like 7, 8, 9 or more marbles in a turn. And I was consistently getting 3 or 4.
Oh, that's not enough.
Yeah. And I'm like, I don't see anything. And I'm like, okay, well, if I use this ability or if I, get help from the professor, is this going to help significantly? I'm like, I don't know that it is. And so I don't know. I mean, there's a certain, it could be a luck outlier. There's some ways to mitigate that. There's the getting help from the professor built in. There's, the different potions, which give you different abilities that let you manipulate that a bit. But when you're consistently only getting 3 or 4 marbles and people are getting, not 8 or 9 a turn, but better than you on average, and then they have several incredible turns, that can hurt. That can definitely hurt you.
And for me, I actually did pretty well. I didn't win every game of this by any means, but I was usually competitive in most of the games I played of this.
Sure.
And I find those plays so enjoyable.
Yeah.
Those plays where you're pulling 8, 9 marbles are fantastic to set up, and I was decent enough at setting them up that I had that experience and enjoyed that experience. Mm-hmm. And there's certain things that you can use to set up that. There's one called the Filter of Lavamancing, which is one of the advanced potions, where you can discard stuff up to the top and set up even cooler combos that way.
Right.
There's some really interesting things going on with this, and I enjoyed it partly because I was at least decent at it.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'd go as far as good, but decent. I just felt engaged by it.
Sure.
So
I would have liked to have seen some sort of strategic element where maybe some of the potions, instead of giving you a one-time ability, give you an ongoing effect.
Expansion?
Well, yeah, and that might be. When I do think of a more tactical game like Five Tribes, the Djinns give you that. The artifacts can give you that. And so I feel like if there was some kind of engine building, because I tend to associate engine building and combos in my mind, and it was just you're pulling off a couple instantaneous combos, which is very satisfying. Don't get me wrong, but I felt like I wish there were a little bit more strategic depth to all this, what is really great tactical play. So
fair enough. Let's talk about theme, Sean.
Yeah.
Did you feel this was a thematic experience?
No, but I didn't feel it was unthematic, if that makes any sense. I definitely,
okay.
So I think of a similar theme, Alchemists. I definitely felt like that was more of an immersive...
Very tied in.
Yeah, thematic experience. This less so, but I feel like that's just kind of more of the theme that you put on it for this, Candy Crush Bejeweled the board game.
The idea is you're gathering ingredients, and each of these 4 different colors of marbles represents an ingredient.
Right.
And they're exploding when they're colliding. I don't know how thematic it is necessarily, but I think they provide enough thematic connections of this potion of love convinces the other person to give you all of their reserves.
Yeah.
Or so the names of the potions spell that out well, and the help from professor idea of this, that you're trying to perform best and show off your potion making skills the best, I think there's a thematic connection there.
Yeah, I'd agree.
But I don't know if you're storytelling during this game like other folks, like you would in other games. So theme is there. I don't know if it's overwhelming. So Sean, what did the guild have to say about this one?
So Josh Walton said, just picked up Potion Explosion at a local con this weekend, and we played it twice. I thought it looked interesting when it was shown at Essen last year, but I have so many clever mechanism to acquire resources, use resources to score points games. That's all hyphenated, that it didn't rise to the top for me. When my wife saw it on Instagram the other day, though, she immediately had to have it. This game is so good. Trying to make the best explosion you can is a fun and satisfying exercise. But what puts it over the top is how you can manipulate the tracks with the different potions. It really provides opportunities for clever plays. The production is obviously gorgeous, and there's just enough variety in the potions to keep it from getting stale, though I'm looking forward to future expansions.
So what's interesting about that take versus Sylvain Lacroix's take, Sylvain's take was, first of all, components are amazing, and I think it's hard to dispute that with this game.
Sure.
This could be a contender for the Dice Tower Award for best components.
Except it has no miniatures.
Yeah, I know.
Only miniatures games win that award.
It may get my vote outright, period.
It won't win, though.
Okay, thanks, Sean.
Because it has no miniatures.
All right.
I'm crusading.
I know you are.
Okay, anyway.
It is very accessible. I usually tell non-gamer friends that it's like Candy Crush, the board game. Gameplay is fun, but after a dozen of games played, the wow factor is mostly gone. Don't get me wrong, it's a good game, but falls short in terms of replayability. My first rating would have been a 5, but after the first few games, falls to a low 4. I'm pretty sure that if I would play over 20 plus games, it would become a high 3. So, both of them kind of mention concerns over replayability.
Sure.
But come to a different conclusion. And I guess the last thing I'll ask you before we kind of get to final thoughts and ratings, Sean, where do you stand on replayability with this one?
Well, and again, it has that tactical play, and so I need the tactical play to be so interesting that I'm willing to come back to it again and again, knowing that it's all dependent on the setup and how best I can take advantage of that particular setup. So at this point, I don't find it highly replayable. And I don't know that the switching out of the potions, the types of potions every time you play, is necessarily that much extra variability that it would keep my interest in the long term. Now, throw in a small expansion to add some strategic depth, we may have a completely different story. What do you think?
I think I understand why you want that.
Yeah.
For your style of game and how you play, I understand why that's perfect for Sean Ramirez.
Sure.
This game is at least meant to be more accessible.
Absolutely.
And I think as is, it is very accessible, and I think it succeeds on that.
Well, let me ask you about that accessibility. Okay. And first off, let me just say that I think every designer should be asking themselves, what would Sean want in this situation?
Great.
Everyone ask yourself that. So is it as accessible as you think?
I think so.
Okay.
Because of how quick it is to teach.
Once you take 20 minutes to set it up.
It doesn't take that long to set up.
Once you take a good 10, 12 minutes to set up a game.
If it's boxed up properly, I don't think it takes that long to set up.
Maybe not.
And it's easy enough to teach, because you teach the marble removing mechanic,
right,
the explosion mechanic, and you teach what each of the potions does. Go from there. Is it gateway? Maybe not quite.
And that's my concern, is that there is enough gameplay here. There is enough complexity that I'm not sure who this is targeting. If this is targeting, because I don't think it's targeting gateway gamers, because there's a little bit more going on here than you would expect. And I don't know if it's necessarily going to be satisfying. It sounds like the spot for it is, newer gamers or gamers that prefer lighter games that can be played with gamers that do prefer a little bit something more, and they can both be kind of satisfied, if that makes sense.
I think if you like those lighter games and you're a newer gamer, I think you're actually incredibly satisfied by this one. It does something very different from what you might typically expect.
No, but I'm saying mixing. You have
sure,
lighter gamers playing with
But I think those lighter, but you're saying it as if lighter gamers are just kind of satisfied, and I think it's more than that.
No, I'm saying a gamer like myself,
right,
who wants a little bit more of that strategic depth. I'm satisfied enough, but I'm not going to think to take this out in most situations.
Interesting.
Unless I'm playing in a mixed group.
Okay. Interesting. I think it's accessible enough to where it's not quite gateway, but I think it's close enough where you could consider it pretty close to that. Someone's in a board game store curious to try something out, and they see this.
Sure.
I'm not afraid to teach this to them. Whereas Five Tribes,
Oh, well, yeah.
Stay away.
No question.
So I think it is accessible enough for what it needs to be.
The only thing, my little nitpicky thing is, it seemed difficult to figure out how to lay out your tableau, in a sense. No, you don't think so?
No. You stack like potions if you want to.
Well, but you need to show the points that are on them, so you don't want to stack them.
Sure, not totally, but you can kind of half stack them.
But then you have to like twist them. It's not the most intuitive, and because they're not a nice shape, they're that potion shape, which is cool. I don't know, it was a little unintuitive and it was a little unwieldy, and I don't know, it was just a little bit off-putting.
Yeah, I didn't have a problem with that.
Well, you're just a better person than I am, Alex.
Typically. But as far as to go back a little bit to replayability with this one, I think it definitely could use an expansion. I think having 8 in the box is certainly good value. Watchdog Alex is not upset about this one. I think MSRP, when I looked it up, is $50. I think it's worth it for the components you get and what you get in the game. Though, Sean, I think you'd probably dispute in terms of the amount of game you get in the box for that price. But I think components alone and what they put into the production of this game makes sense to me as a price point for sure. I think it probably could use a couple of different potion types. I think that would be nice. Your idea of maybe something to add more of the ongoing engine building benefit.
Yeah.
Maybe, but
Definitely.
Okay. I don't think it necessarily needs that. I think more varieties of potions would definitely help, though. So
I think it'd be more of the same, but...
Okay, fair enough.
Fair enough.
Sean, final thoughts and rating for this one.
So if you're unaware, we rate on a 6-point scale. A 1 is a poorly designed game, but playable, not necessarily fun. A 6 is an all-time favorite that's a contender for the top 10. So I'm hovering between a 3 and a 4. So a 3 is, game is okay, not exciting, we'll play in the right situation. A 4 is a good game, worth playing, just not all the time belongs in the duchy. A lot of times what makes that difference between a 3 and a 4 is a 4, I want to make sure I have access to it. Whether that means I go buy it, or I just know that, I'm going to be able to play it without much effort. So I'm struggling with that because I feel like if I'm buying this, I'm not buying it for me. I'm buying it for other people who will enjoy it.
In your case, Mariah.
Yeah,
probably.
I think Mariah would enjoy this a lot. But I don't think if she had a friend over, I don't think the friend could play it. Because, I've had this experience before where I've played some light games with some of her non-gamer friends, and they're much heavier than I expected that they would be, so to speak. So I'm going to give it a 3. Game is okay, not exciting, we'll play in the right situation. Even to have other players play this, I'm not necessarily willing to go pick it up for that purpose right now. If this gets an expansion that adds a little bit more strategic depth, it would go up to a 4, more than likely. If it had just a little bit more something. I think it's a fantastic game for certain people. I can see the appeal of this game. I think it is very satisfying hearing all that clicking and clanking. I think the chain reactions are really cool. There's a lot to like about this game. And while it's not for me necessarily, I can see why it would have significant appeal. And I would definitely say try this out. Definitely try this out. It's worth at least putting on your radar because I think a lot of people will enjoy this game. But right now, it's not quite for me. But I'd be happy to play it on occasion.
So I'm between a 4 and a 5 with this one, Sean.
Mm-hmm.
And 4 is a good game, worth playing, just not all the time, belongs in the duchy. It's not going lower than that.
Sure.
I want to have access to this, especially because I play with newer gamers a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And I'm strongly considering buying this for myself.
Okay.
Even separately from that. 5 is a great game, will rarely turn down a play of it. And I think on early plays, it probably is more towards the 5 range.
Yeah.
But I think the replayability does hold it back and the variability does hold it back. I don't necessarily see the need for the strategic depth. I think that'd be great if they could find some way of designing that and doing that. Fine. But even if they just threw out a couple more potion types in a mini expansion or something like that, that's good enough for me. I'm good there. So there's a lot going on here. The components are gorgeous. The gameplay's engaging enough and accessible enough. It looks great on the table. The combo play is engaging in this one. And so ultimately, I'm going to give Potion Explosion a high 4. So not quite a 5, but definitely worthy. And I think it's worth checking out, especially, by the way, if you're more of a family gamer. You play games with your family typically.
Oh, absolutely.
I think this is absolutely perfect.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%.
So cool. Potion Explosion. Sean gives it a 3. I give it a 4. Check it out.
You are listening to the Dukes of Dice, proud members of the Dice Tower Network. For other great shows in the network, check out dicetowernetwork.com. Back to Alex and Sean for this week's Dukes Double-Take.
All right, in this week's Dukes Double-Take, we're looking back at episode 58, Marco Schmarco. We're talking about the Voyages of Marco Polo. So back in that episode, Sean, what did we give Voyages of Marco Polo?
You gave it a 3, Alex. Game is okay, not exciting. We'll play in the right situation. I give it a 4, a good game, worth playing, just not all the time, belongs in the duchy. A big part of that rating for me was that this is designed by the guys that designed Tzolk'in, one of my all-time favorite games. So Simone Luciani and Daniele Ticini, I believe. And so I had kind of hyped this game up a lot in my mind because at the time, I think, was Tzolk'in still my number 1? No, I think it was my number 2 at that point. Terra Mystica taken over. But anyway, I felt like I was expecting a lot more from this game. And looking back, having actually played this game quite a bit since the review, both in real life, with also with one of the expansions, and then online, I love this game. I think it's fantastic. I think it was unfair of me to kind of compare it to Tzolk'in. And so for me, it's elevated to a 5. A great game. Will rarely turn down a play of it. I love this game. It is super good. Super good.
So for me, it still sticks probably as a 3 because I don't care about playing it. I think I may have played it once, maybe, in the time being. It was certainly on the upward trend by the time we were reviewing this. My initial play of this was, and then in future plays, I saw more of the merit of it, and it rose up a bit. I think it's probably a good game as a better descriptor.
Yeah.
But it's not something I necessarily am going to suggest playing, would want to play, would actively suggest. But if a group of people are playing it, sure, I'll hop in. I liked Grand Austria Hotel better, for instance. And so I liked El Gaucho better.
Wait. Okay.
For use of dice.
Yeah, all right. But that's dice drafting. Marco Polo is dice placement.
Whatever.
It's the opposite.
Okay.
It's the opposite thing. One's taking them out, one's putting them in.
Ignore the comparison. But basically, yeah, it's one that is certainly well regarded now. It's just not one that I'm as inclined to play. And maybe I need to give it another chance at some point. But I just remember thinking this one was too convoluted. I was annoyed. I recall being annoyed.
Oh boy.
And you weren't a fan of this by the horizontal paths and the fact that there weren't vertical paths connecting.
Yep.
Still annoyed by that.
Okay.
But yeah, I know I'm in the minority, probably on this game overall, among the folks who listen to this show.
Do you want to play it on Yucata online?
I might give it a shot there.
Okay.
So I just played Castles of Burgundy on Yucata, and I like their system.
I have some other things I want to say about it, but I think I'm going to kind of comment on some of the guild thoughts because Guild
had a lot to say about this one.
Yes.
So Bill Hendrickson kicks us off with, it still gets a lot of love by reviewers, so I bought the game, and I'm so glad I did. It has quickly become one of our favorites. Getting a great score seems to depend on being successful in both completing several contracts and traveling to many cities. The interesting challenge is seeing which city action cards come out in each game, combined with the various player characters in play, and coming up with a plan of attack. Analyzing the board after setup feels a little like Dominion, but I like the gameplay so much better.
Yeah, and I think so. I think that analyzing the board is incredibly important. And it's something that I know I didn't do in my initial plays. I'm just like, I'm just going to go do stuff. But no, it is incredibly important to sit down and think, how am I going to attack this particular situation? Reminds me of Scythe a little bit in that way, in that, okay, how, with this given combination of my upper board, lower board, how am I going to do this? So I agree with that completely.
Anthony Faber says, having played the Voyages of Marco Polo 5 times this week,
wow,
and 25 times total, if I've entered all my plays, I'd say, yeah, it's holding up pretty well for me. The extreme variable player powers, along with the modular locations, gives it a huge amount of replayability.
I agree with that. There are so many different city tiles and cards for the major cities, the small cities, that it is an incredibly different game every time.
And he mentioned the extreme player powers, and I think that's accurate. This is one where it's not a minor advantage or a little advantage. This is game-breaking abilities for everyone.
No, you look to the left, oh man, that power's broken. You look to the right, oh man, that power's broken.
I don't know if they're equally broken.
Yeah, they're equally broken. That's fine.
That's what you say.
It's fine.
All right.
They're all fine. They're all really good.
Oscar Arneson says, I originally dismissed the Voyages of Marco Polo for some reason and passed on a secondhand copy. As reviewers kept featuring it on various What We've Been Playing segments and then finally playing it, I started kicking myself for not grabbing it and got it when it finally hit the retail here this summer. I enjoyed it a lot and have to admit that I'm terrible at it, but I still have a good time. Fair enough.
Cool.
Ian Kissel says, the Voyages of Marco Polo is one that I finished playing the first time and thought, oh, that was good, but it didn't blow me away. However, I keep coming back to it. The game presents a unique puzzle each time you play, and it's a great mix of long-term strategy and tactical play. To me, it's a quintessential medium-weight Euro. And what I would say to that point is, I agree that the more I've played it, the more I've kind of liked it a little bit more each time.
Yeah, because you're figuring the game out. Like, there's kind of a high barrier to entry here in the sense that it is a hard game to master because you're kind of building up to big actions. There's not a lot of incremental stuff. I mean, maybe there is in the collection of the different resources and things like that, but it kind of reminds me of Motainai in a weird sense, just in that it's a big sweeping action that you're doing. So I don't know if that makes any sense.
Chad Jacobson says, the variable setup makes it amazingly replayable. Getting a character and playing to that character's strengths scratches that efficiency itch in my brain. I enjoy it the same way I like maximizing a faction's play in Scythe. I never understand the criticism I've heard for games of this type that after you pick a character, the game plays itself because your play has now been dictated. Like many Euros, the efficiency of your actions is part of the puzzle. The other rampant misconception is just fulfill contracts because that will always win. The game is unbalanced towards contracts. Not so. It's the easiest thing for an inexperienced player to focus on, but with some experience, traveling can be extremely competitive and usually win depending on board layout. Again, another point for how much variability can really modify your strategies. This game flirts with a 6 for me, and it's even better with the new characters and gifts mini expansion.
And I agree with that assessment 100%. And that's what we talked about in our review is like, well, it seems like you should just complete contracts and traveling is really hard. Yeah, traveling is really hard to pull off. Once you figure out how to do it, though, it is incredibly powerful, especially if you're able to kind of gobble up some of these cities, get the one-time bonuses, or have access to the different actions that you can get from those cities, or the income action or the income bonus that you get. So yeah, it's much easier to fulfill contracts. And so it's what people kind of gravitate to as they're figuring it out. But yeah, I've had some pretty massive travel games that have just been killer, just killer. So I agree 100%, Chad. Good assessment.
And to kind of hammer home the point of this is pretty well received in the community, John Giblin says this is his number 2 game of all time. So I don't think it quite gets that high for you, Sean. It's just still a 5.
It's a 5, but I mean, it would probably sit somewhere in my top 50, I would say, for sure. It's excellent. It is really good.
So that's our Dukes Double-Take of Voyages of Marco Polo. Goes from a 4 to a 5 for Sean, and a 3, but maybe a slightly higher 3 for me.
All right, fair enough.
All right, this week in our discussion topic, we're doing one that our good buddy Suzanne, Duke Suzanne, provided. And Suzanne wrote on the Guild in a topic called Cult of the New. When does a game stop being Cult of the New? 1 year? 2 years? 6 months? And do you give less credibility to the commentary about a game while it's still new? Does a game need to settle in for, quote, legitimacy? And then she goes on to kind of answer her own question a little bit here. I feel like I hear criticism of enthusiasm about a game because it's new. Even when Alex and Sean talked about Scythe being in their top 10, they seemed to feel compelled to justify or caveat its place there because it was new. Whereas I feel like they're experienced gamers who can tell what they like and don't like. While a game may be bumped up a few spots because it's new and exciting, I think they do a good job of balancing pros and cons when they evaluate a game. Yeah, I think we do a great job here.
I agree, but I think it was interesting that the way she wrote it, she said Sean and Alex, but when you read it, you said Alex and Sean. Interesting.
Look, it's already baked into the show that at the start of it, it goes Sean and Alex. No, but I just wanted my moment in the sun.
No, but first we hear Eric's voice, and then we hear your voice. You're the first Duke.
Right, but not
voice we hear.
But not my name. Just saying.
All right. Anyway, so I think part of this was because Suzanne had mentioned to me that when we redid our top 10 and we both put Scythe on, me a little bit more so than you, I kind of gave this big caveat of, well, I know it's new and I know there's a lot of hype and it's Cult of the New and I don't want to put it too high up on my list, but I think I really like it. So I think that's kind of where some of that came from. And I think that there is, as someone who is Cult of the New, and I would be Cult of the New even if we didn't have this podcast, because before the podcast, I was still constantly buying the new hotness. I do feel like there is some benefit, maybe not to me, to kind of having a game have that staying power, but maybe, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe I'm just very susceptible to other people's opinions.
Well, certainly for folks who buy fewer games.
Sure.
That's important.
Yeah, absolutely. No doubt. But I think there is a value to doing, like our Dukes Double-Take, where we can kind of see, all right, it's a year's gone by. Maybe we hated this game. Maybe we loved this game. I look at a game like Five Tribes, which was very Cult of the New and very popular, and I didn't like it that much, but then I came around to it. And the reverse can certainly happen for other games.
With Elysium, that settle-in factor helped it for me. And Matainai, obviously, it's grown even more in that sense from it settling in, from realizing how good it is. So certainly, as you play a game and as it sticks around, it can improve in its standing.
So what do you think about Cult of the New then? Is there a time frame and does it matter?
There is absolutely a time frame, but it's hard to pick out what exactly it is. Because it's sort of that moment when a game stops being talked about consistently as, oh man, I want to play this all the time, or reviewers are putting out new reviews of it, or it's coming up in it's hitting the table consistently at the game store. That's a tough one because there are games that have been around longer that still hit the table, like Castles of Burgundy's been around for a good chunk of time now, and still hits the table quite a bit. So it's tough. It's tough to find that right metric that quite measures this. For me, maybe 6 months kind of fits the bill. Sounds closest to me. I don't know about where do you stand on this one, Sean?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I thought a lot about this, and I thought, maybe that year is a good time frame. I think it also just kind of depends on the convention cycle, and I think it's also dependent on when the game comes out. So, like, for example, if you have a game come out at Origins, then it's still kind of Cult of the New at Gen Con, and then maybe by the time Essen rolls around, it's not. But Essen's a little bit different because, Essen's over there in Europe, and it kind of takes a while for those games to trickle over here. And again, this is from kind of the North American perspective, because it could be the opposite for those in, other continents. But at least for us, I feel like we see some of the Essen games at BGG, and they kind of filter their way in, but we may not see some of them until early spring, early summer even. So I think it just kind of depends on the accessibility of some of these titles, and also what convention is kind of following that next one. And is it going to kind of give its an injection of its own Cult of the New? So I don't know. I look at a game like, say, Dead of Winter. Dead of Winter, 2 years ago, hugely popular game, shot up the charts, talked about by all the podcasts. I think it was, our second review that we did? Because I think we started like maybe a week before it came out. And now the standalone expansion, Long Night, came out. It's been out for not quite a month, maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks. And I feel like I've heard very little chatter about that. And I don't know what that is. Is that because Dead of Winter was Cult of the New, and now this is just kind of there's differences in this expansion, but in some ways, some people might kind of think, it's just kind of more of the same with some different characters, some different abilities, whatever. And so it doesn't quite fit that bill of Cult of the New. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's kind of weird. I feel like I've heard very little about it, and I haven't had a big desire to play the expansion. As much as I enjoy Dead of Winter, I'm like, at some point I'll get around to it.
Yeah, it is interesting how that works.
Yeah.
For sure. How things kind of shuffle out of the rotation and then sometimes don't come back and sometimes do. A game's staying power can be unpredictable sometimes, for sure. All right, Guild had a ton to say about this one. Joe Rackstad, this is just a theory, but I think people new to the hobby are more prone to be Cult of the New. Once you're in the hobby a good while, I'd imagine that you'd tend to gravitate more towards games that you're already familiar with and become less Cult of the New and more Cult of the Old. I feel that way with a number of media. My favorite music is stuff that was new when I was just getting into music. Now I'm less interested in new music and more interested in the stuff I listened to when I was growing up. Same with movies. I've been in the hobby about 5-ish years now, and while new games still pique my interest, I find that my top 5 has stayed pretty static with games from a couple years ago. Yeah, that isn't true for us, and maybe it's because we just play so many new games as part of this show.
Yeah, I think so like, for example, with music, there's a study that says like at the age of, 32, 35, you just tend to stop listening to new music. I don't know that that's the same with movies. I feel like with music, that's been kind of true for me. You've got a couple of years to go.
Yep.
But for the most part,
You're old.
I'll listen to new music from an artist that I've, that's established for me. Movies, I don't know. Movies and TV shows, I feel like I'm still consuming new stuff. And with games, though, I feel like, I'm going to find some gems. I'm going to find some that I want to go back to. But I enjoy learning a new game. I enjoy that experience of, is this going to be the next amazing game? Is this going to be the one that I'm going to, love and cherish forever? So I don't know. I don't know that I completely agree with that, but we certainly can come back to cherish favorites from time to time.
No doubt. You just mentioned Lords of Vegas has been a long-time favorite, and it was great to get that back to the table. But there's that, you're always looking for that Millennium Blades or that Side, that game that's going to pop into your consciousness and not let go. And there's some games that they're flash in a pan. It sounds really good at the time, or you're really excited about it initially, and then it just kind of fades.
Yeah.
And it's a crowded marketplace. It's kind of understandable. Bryant Hudson says, I'd say a year from when it's published in your country and readily available is when Cult of the New fades. So some of the Essen games that are coming out shortly may not be over here for a while. Still, even though a few reviewers will have them prior to that.
Yeah. So I feel like for some in the United States, the Essen releases get a bit of short shrift because it does take that much longer.
Did Orleans kind of get that, do you think? Maybe wasn't as prominent as it could have been?
Well, no, I think Orleans was successful, but I think when we're looking at recognitions, like especially in the Dice Tower Awards, the way that the cutoff date works, by the time you're voting, people aren't playing as much of the Essen releases. And so I think it would be better if it was kind of like an Essen to Essen is the year, which creates problems of its own. But I feel like there's a lot of fantastic Euro titles that kind of get left by the wayside with, for example, the Dice Tower Awards because of the structure of that. They use the calendar year, essentially, with some exceptions. But
I like this one from Chris Holm. He says, 3.5 years because some copies of Cult of the New games do not have a chance to be played by its owner until 2 to 3 years have gone by, especially for severe sufferers of Cult of the New syndrome. And yeah, I have some games that I've had for more than a year now that I haven't played at all. And I know you definitely have some of those games, Sean, or close to it.
Yeah, I'm actively trying to get rid of them, though.
Shelf of shame.
Not get rid of them, but I mean...
Get them off the shelf of shame.
Yeah, exactly.
AJ says, well, I hate this phrase, but it does bring out the point that people might be overexcited about things because they're new and they haven't had the chance to stand the test of time yet. I think new games coming out or haven't come out yet is definitely Cult of the New. I think the game within a year of its release is still considered pretty new. Often it's only available on one side of the pond. After about a year, though, maybe 2, I think the game has had long enough to have the general gaming community make a decision on whether it's a good game or not. I definitely say 3 years, it's not considered Cult of the New.
And I think it's interesting because Cult of the New can kind of be used as a pejorative, but it also can be embraced. I mean, we kind of embrace it, and it's just something that we realize. It's part of, like, for me at least, it's part of my nature to kind of want to find something new. I enjoy that discovery process. I think it's fantastic. I like to see how a mechanic gets reused in this game with a slight tweak, or I like to see how it's incorporated elements of this game and this game together, or I like to see how this theme is being used. I like that. I like that discovery process. Are you going to play a bunch of crap in the process? Yeah, probably. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But I'm okay with that. Compare that to someone who wants to play the same 10, 15 games that they absolutely love all the time. That sounds pretty good too. But for me, it's not necessarily... I'd love to have time to be able to do a little bit of both.
We had a friend who was the same one game all the time.
Yeah.
And that can be tricky.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that just about wraps it up. So, Sean, any final thoughts on this?
Well, like I said, it really depends on how you want to use it. If you want to, you can embrace it, or you can use it in a negative sense. I've come to embrace it. You know, use a year, use 2 years, use 3 years, use the convention cycle. Do what's best for you, Alex.
I think seeing a game's staying power, definitely, and I think this helps with the Dukes Double-Take, is seeing whether a game's stuck around, whether it's still memorable or something that people are playing. And a lot of times, people aren't. And I think a Dukes Double-Take's been a good way of measuring that. So I think for me, a year is actually a pretty good way of determining that settle-in factor.
Sure.
Whether a game's truly settled in and is part of things or not.
I think that's fair
Certainly
enough. Opinions
can change after that, but not as significantly. So, yeah. All right. Before we go, our naming runner-ups, and we had a pretty tight field this week.
Yeah.
It was tough to choose between. The guild favorite, for sure, came from the name Father, continuing the bridesmaid streak.
Yep.
I'm not dogging Steve. Here's the great thing about Steve, by the way. Beyond being just the nicest guy and really cool person, he only puts out one name every time. But the one name he puts out is absolute high quality.
He workshops it. He goes to like this marketing agency and he gets workshopped. They send it back and forth. There's test groups. I mean, that's why they're so high quality. It's that one, yeah.
So this week he came with A Cult of the New.
Yeah.
And that one had the most thumbs. It was very close.
What was your hang up was that the alchemy potion thing isn't quite a cult in your mind?
Definitely dictionary definition it is, but it just in my mind I associate it more with kind of the witchcraft thing. I don't know.
Maybe he's dogging you after all, Steve.
It could be. But then again, I was rooting for him a couple weeks ago when we had to Schwazi for the winner. All right. Danielle Bach came with Variety is the Spice of Life. Variety for talking about Cult of the New, and Spice talking about Marco Polo. Good incorporation, like the phrase. Well done. Joshua Costa, and a couple people had versions of this. Matthew Ward had a version of this. I think I liked Joshua's better, and we almost went with this one at different points. Bomb Voyage, referencing the explosions in Potion Explosion and the Voyage of Marco Polo. Pretty good. And Matthew had CMON Voyage, but pronounced, well...
Come on, or CMON, either way.
Yeah, Voyage.
Would you have been okay with it had he not made you play Broadsides?
Yeah, no, he got blacklisted this week, for sure.
Oh, boy.
Strawman Matthew again. All right. Stryker came with Con Boom. This was one of my favorites this week. You were less hot on it.
It was like, zoom, right over my head.
Oh, I thought it was great. Because
like,
you have the cons of Marco Polo.
Makes perfect
with the
sense.
explosion. Great name. Well done, Stryker.
Kaboom.
Right there solidly in the top 6. And then Dan Stanley, not intentionally a Teen Beach Movie reference, but with Cruisin' for a Bruisin'. Bruisin' spelled B-R-E-W.
Yep.
Yep. Go listen to the song, because Sean's not going to play it.
I sure am not. Will not.
And not in the top 6.
Shan't.
Not in the top 6. We did have people with Marco, Potion kind of references. That was a pretty recurring theme on the guild this week, for sure.
Big time.
Yeah, that's going to do it. Congratulations to James Holzhauer, first-time namer with I Want a New Drug. Huey Lewis. Won't win every time, but it won this time.
I hope Huey Lewis rarely wins. That's a weird...
I hope everyone every week has a Huey Lewis suggestion.
Do you notice that Empire was playing a ton of Phil Collins the other week?
Yeah, it was kind of funky.
Yeah, it was a little weird. Anyway, that's going to do it for episode 110. Until next time, this is Sean.
And Alex.
And Hail Hydra.
Thank you so much for listening to the Dukes of Dice. Today's episode was recorded in the Duchy on September 15th, 2016. Our theme music is provided by Carbo Hydro M from his Prime Legacy album. The Dukes of Dice are a proud member of the Dice Tower Network. For other great board gaming podcasts, check out DicetowerNetwork.com. And for all the latest in the Duchy, go to DukesOfDice.com. Find us on Twitter at Dukes of Dice. Join in conversations on our Board Game Geek Guild. Find us on Facebook and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Please also consider supporting us on Patreon. Thanks to Meeple Realty, who's provided promotional support. For high-quality board game inserts, check out MeepleRealty.com. Meeple Realty, think inside the box. We'll see you back here next week. Until then, game on!
You like Huey Lewis in the news?
They're okay.
Their early work was a little too new wave for my taste. But when Sports came out in '83, I think they really came into their own, commercially and artistically. The whole album has a clear, crisp sound and a new sheen of consummate professionalism that really gives the songs a big boost. He's been compared to Elvis Costello, but I think Huey has a far more bitter, cynical sense of humor.
Hey, Albert,
Yes, Alan?
why are the copies of the style section all over the place? Do you have a dog? A little chow or something?
No, Alan.
Is that a raincoat?
Yes, it is. In '87, Huey released this, 4, their most accomplished album. I think their undisputed masterpiece is Hip to Be Square. A song so catchy, most people probably don't listen to the lyrics, but they should, because it's not just about the pleasures of conformity and the importance of trends. It's also a personal statement about the band itself. Hey, Paul! Ah!
It's hip to be square. It's hip to be square.
Probably our best end credits ever.